And it has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the rope. Goodbye, Hall. Don Mattingly. Tuck likes one. Deep left field. Down the line. And bowling it. Out of here. Out of here.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Tablesetters covering all things baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined my tag partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up, Steve? What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning back into Tablesetters. Steve, I feel like it feels like it's been forever since it's just me and you on here. We had a guest last time you and I were on, and before that, I did a solo episode when you were in the middle of your move, had Chris Welsh on. So just having an episode with you and me kicking it here, it feels like forever.
It has felt like forever. And the only thing that's changed is another 30 inches of snow here on Long Island. And man, we're waiting for the spring to emerge. Of course, we have spring training starting with the WBC emerging, as you mentioned, with our episode with Sean Spradlin. Go back in the archives and check it out. We have college baseball humming, which is the reason why we're here tonight. We're introducing what we're calling Tablesetters University. So we've dropped some other college baseball coverage in the past, but if you notice on our YouTube page, we've sort of categorized all these different episodes, whether it be our fantasy baseball coverage, which we're calling Roto Setters, our guest episodes, and of course, as we're doing tonight, TSU, Tablesetters University, taking our stab at covering the wild world of NCAA baseball, which has been an amazing start in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited about this, man. Previously, we would just kind of put everything in the baseball world that was kind of in our atmosphere or in our head into one episode and just kind of, as many baseball topics as we could talk about weekly, we'd talk about it. We wouldn't really separate Major League Baseball and fantasy and college. And now we're thinking, you know what, this is still all going to fall under the Tablesetters umbrella, but it kind of puts it in a neater package for our listeners where you can see exactly which mini umbrella the episode falls under. So first official episode of Tablesetters University. As Steve mentioned, we have had other college-centered episodes before, whether it be interviews with coaches. This is really the first one where it's Steve and I talking about what is happening in the college baseball world. I think for a while, Major League Baseball has been our bread and butter. But we're going to mix this in here, and I'm sure Steve and I are going to kind of come at this almost with a Major League, a look at things, like with that in the background of seeing all this college stuff and taking a look at how it might affect Major League Baseball in years to come. But I'm excited to get something started here, a little bit new.
Absolutely. So before we get into it, make sure you guys support the show. Follow us on IG and on X at TablesettersPod. We're posting some reels, some content. Devin doing a really good job running the X machine over there, posting things all over the place to get you guys engaged, to bridge the gap from now until opening day and all the baseball that happens in between. But Devin, as you mentioned, I'm going to jump right into it. And with our opening say, and how can we not start 2 weeks into the college baseball season with the conversation clarifying itself in a way that's difficult to ignore, because the most dominant offensive forces in the country are not corner infielders padding numbers in midweek games. They're not designated hitters living off favorable matchups. They are shortstops, players occupying the most demanding defensive position on the field while simultaneously driving their offenses. And at the center of this discussion, of course, is Roch Cholowsky and Justin Lebron. And the conversation of both these players, we'll get into the numbers in that, but it is staggering to watch these two players through the first 2 weeks of the season really putting their stamp on the college baseball landscape.
Yeah, man, it's fun. And I got to be honest, it kind of reminds me of 2 years ago. When I think about college baseball, it's clearly going through a boom right now. I feel like it's kind of, I don't want to say taking over, but there just seems to be way more chatter than there was a couple years ago. And I think sometimes about how did we get here? And I think it's a slow burn. It happens over time. It's not one thing or the other. But one thing I do think got some eyes on it that maybe were not on it previously was 2 years ago when Travis Bazzana and Charlie Condon, it seemed like every day one or the other or both were hitting home runs. And it appeared, even though they weren't playing against each other, it just felt like they were going, I don't know, tit for tat, I guess. And that is what this season has started off with Roch Cholowsky and Justin Lebron. And we started the season with a lot of experts saying, and when I say experts, I'm talking about college experts, and I'm talking about Major League baseball prospect draft kind of experts, those people. A lot of people were basically saying Roch Cholowsky is a slam dunk #1 overall pick. The White Sox are going to go get him, no doubt about it. And I kind of sit here like, I don't know if that's ever the case in baseball, because all these teams and front offices have different things that motivate them when it comes to the drafts. And I think, yeah, the season needs to be played. Just a year ago, the name we were talking about maybe a week or two before the season was Jace Laviolette. Things didn't go well for him last year, and he fell, still drafted in the first round, but he fell significantly. I don't think Eli Willits was the guy who everyone thought was going to be drafted #1 overall. So when I look at this, again, if I'm a betting man, sure, I'm absolutely putting the money on Roch Cholowsky going to the White Sox. But remember, the White Sox are led by a guy who thought Luis Angel Acuna was a switch hitter. Like 2 weeks after they traded for him, was just referring to him as a switch hitter. So like when it comes to the Chicago White Sox, let's be honest, like all bets are off here. And in baseball draft in general, I just think there's a lot of things that sometimes can come out of left field. Last year's draft was very unpredictable. This is fun. This little matchup between Cholowsky and LeBron is a lot of fun. I think Roch is certainly the more well-rounded, kind of guaranteed, can do basically everything really well. But both of these guys are super fun to watch.
For sure. And through 7 games, let's start with Cholowsky because he is anchoring the #1 team in the country, the UCLA Bruins. And through 7 games, as I mentioned, he's hitting .393 with a .486 on-base percentage and a staggering 1.143 slugging percentage, which is good for an on-base 1.629, 6 home runs in just 28 at-bats, which means he's homering once every 4.6 trips to the plate. And he's paired the power with bounds. He's drawn 4 walks against 4 strikeouts. And looking at him, I mean, UCLA, their team, they're 6-1. They're averaging 9.2 runs per game, hitting .316 as a club, and remarkably has yet to commit an error this season. That's a big thing. Looking at Cholowsky, the defensive precision on his end, it adds to his value even further because it's not merely an offensive centerpiece that is riding a wave. He's a foundational defender at this point on a team that's outscored a top TCU team 30-8 across a 3-game series. So they're in the headlines right now. UCLA is crushing it. In other words, you look at the numbers of Cholowsky, these are not numbers inflated by weak competition. They're being compiled in a meaningful high visibility rate in moments against quality opponents. So Cholowsky is every bit as advertised. It's still early in the season, but he's been fun to watch. And if you guys have been following college baseball, he is a highlight machine right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you mentioned it, like a lot of these, big profile teams with these big players have, gone a little nuts offensively and put up some impressive performances, but a lot of them haven't really played anybody super significant yet. And I know in college baseball, it's kind of like any given Sunday in football. Like at any time, a team can beat a big team and you didn't see it coming. And there's this whole conversation about like, do upsets, single game upsets truly exist or not? Some people will tell you do not refer to any single game win as an upset. It's about series, and we could debate that all day. But the point is, Roch is one of the guys that are putting up these bananas numbers early in the season, and they face somebody, TCU, right? Top 25 team in the country. I know they're a little bit beat up, which is, they have some significant injuries they're going through right now. So it's tough to evaluate a TCU team. With that being said, it's still impressive performance from Roch and his teammates. By the way, I mean, you have Gasparino out there as well, just going crazy right next to him. You have to mention him as well. The Texas transfer there. But Cholowsky, the cool thing about both of these guys, Cholowsky and LeBron, if you watch the Major League Baseball draft every year, it seems like 90%, maybe more, of the position players that are taken first round are labeled as shortstops. But if you actually pay attention, a lot of those guys are not going to stick at shortstop. They make sure they get put under shortstop because it increases their draft visibility and their value. A lot of those guys don't stick. Roch and LeBron are expected to, as of now, be long-time shortstop, guys that are going to stick at that position because they are just as good defensively as they are offensively. It's funny, I was reading a little scouting report that I think was written at the end of last season about Cholowsky, and it said something along the lines of like, there's pop there, but that's kind of the last thing to develop to turn him into like superstar, guaranteed star. And I'm thinking the pop is like just basically fully developed at this point, according to what we've seen. UCLA actually playing as we speak. We're recording this on Tuesday night. They're playing San Diego State, currently down 3-1. There's been a lot of, again, I guess we're not allowed to call them upsets. Maybe we are. I don't know. But there's been a lot of unexpected results tonight. with some teams going down, Arkansas losing to Arkansas State, Georgia Tech losing to Georgia State. UCLA could be another team that goes down tonight. So maybe we'll see some Cholowsky heroics before we finish this recording tonight. But LeBron, just to go to him before we move on, is when I watch him, I just think smooth. Everything he does just looks natural, smooth. It just looks like he just looks naturally like a superstar. The numbers are not quite as crazy as Cholowsky's if you look at every little piece, but you just watch him and he passes the eye test. Biggest knock on him coming into the season is he's got a tendency to chase balls out of the strike zone, especially the breaking ball. We've already seen some improvements. I think coming into tonight, he was around a 10% K rate. So that's something you like seeing. I'm sure that's going to go up, but especially when they get into conference play and face some bigger competition. But you like to see little improvements there. Super fun to watch on defense. The ball just explodes out of his hand, range to both sides, can make any throw. So it's, get your popcorn ready when these two guys are on the TV. It's a fun watch.
So going into tonight, LeBron has reached base in every game this season. And during the sweep of Rhode Island this past weekend, he reached base 7 times in 15 plate appearances and homered 3 times. So you mentioned the numbers not being as comparable to Roch Cholowsky, but they're at the very least the 5 home runs, 8 doubles, 13 extra base hits in just 8 games. He's a guy that, also impressive that he's drawn 9 walks while striking out only 4 times. So you mentioned the eye is getting better, but the difference between these two players as we kind of look towards the draft with the MLB lens is a matter of which offensive architecture of which GM and the front offices trust more, because Cholowsky's start is defined by the vertical damage. We mentioned the home runs and the extraordinary slugging percentage and the statistical spike that positions him at the national lead in long balls. But I think LeBron, as you mentioned, the smoothness, he's more layered. He's driven by on base. He doubles power and the walk to strikeout superior. It's going to be closer than we think. Because you mentioned the upsets of what happened last year with Eli Wills being taken first by the Nats. No one expected that, but looking at the profile of Cholowsky, I think for the person watching from the outside looking in, his profile certainly speaks louder to me. But I think looking at Justin LeBron, let's not sleep on what he's doing with the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think he's doing a lot of things that are making him stand out. And again, this is the first 2 weeks of the season. And what makes this conversation more significant is that both players right now are providing the defensive value as well in the field. That is a really big thing that teams are looking at during the draft as well.
Yeah, and you never know. LeBron, I just think that the ceiling is so high. Not that Cholowsky's is not. I think Cholowsky has a more of a guarantee. Ceiling might be just as high, but LeBron, I think what you're seeing is just scratching the surface of what he's capable of. And before we move on to the next conversation, we're talking about these two guys. There's other guys that could factor into the number 1 pick.
Sure.
You don't know if the White Sox are going to say, you know what, we want more pitching. Give us Jackson Flora, right? With Jackson Flora is not on the show rundown tonight, but we're going to talk about him plenty this season as we do these TSU episodes. And maybe they decide we want the young guy. We want the high school kid. Give us Grady Emerson. You don't know if they're going to go that way. I think the White Sox are in pretty decent shape right now with the young pitching. So I'd be surprised if they went for a Flora. I do think they go position, but high school versus college, you never know. Don't be shocked if something like that happens. And talking about pitching, we're going to talk a little bit about a few pitchers tonight. And the first one I want to mention here is from Wake Forest. Okay. I think Jackson Flora, guys like that are getting a ton of attention right now. Dax Whitney, and they deserve it. Filthy, ridiculous stuff. Chris Levonas is getting some attention out of Wake, but maybe not as much as some of these other guys. So I want to make sure he gets put on the map here very quickly. Wake Forest has continued to live up to their pitching and their pitching lab reputation that people always talk about. Before tonight, they did win tonight 5-1. So these are not exactly perfectly updated numbers, but I'm sure they haven't changed that much. Their K per 9 as a team is 15.6. That's first in the country. 39.4% K rate as a team. That's second in the country. 36.3% whiff rate. That's sixth in the country. 93.8 mile per hour average fastball velocity. That's second in the country. Those numbers are all with Blake Morningstar, who's, I believe, their highest pitching draft prospect coming into the year. He has struggled so far. He has not been good. I think he'll find it, but he has gotten off to a rough start. A lot of the other guys are looking really, really good, Levonas included. The fastest pitch out of his hand this year is 100.5 miles per hour, which is the fastest pitch thrown in the country in D1 this year. Against Siena, which was the series they finished over the weekend, His fastball averaged 98 miles per hour, 19.1 inches vertical break, 10 strikeouts in that game. This is where it gets kind of kooky. The fastball has a stuff plus of 120 so far, 109 stuff plus on the slider, 102 stuff plus on the cutter, 101 stuff plus on the curveball. I believe he throws a changeup, which might, as of now, be his weakest pitch, but like he has all this high quality stuff, multiple pitches, 19 strikeouts through just 8 2/3. A little history on Levonas, if you're not familiar. He was drafted out of high school a couple years ago in the second round by the Brewers, which I just think of that. What a match that would have been. We know what the Brewers can do with these guys with nasty stuff. Imagine he decided to sign there, and who knows? Maybe he ends up a Brewer in the future. We don't know. But he decided to go to Wake. He is draft eligible, not this year, but 2027. If you look at these lists, you have Dax Whitney up there and a few other pitchers. Levonas is a few down, maybe the sixth starting pitcher on some of these lists for the 2027 draft. If he can show consistent command, which has been kind of the knock on him, kind of loses it suddenly and can't get it back sometimes. If he can show consistent command and he can improve his ability to go deep, he went 3 2/3 in his first start, 5 innings in his second start, a little bit of improvement. I think by next year, he's going to shoot up those draft boards because the stuff is just absolutely filthy and people are going to be drooling over it. And you know, all these guys, all these scouts think their organization can take a guy that maybe has a little bit of command issue and just mold them and fix them. So I would be surprised if he does not climb up those boards a little bit. Does have a little bit of a high effort delivery, and that paired with the command issues, they say gives him a little bit of reliever risk. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's just exactly what it sounds like. There's a risk that he ends up being a bullpen guy instead of the starter that we hope he ends up being. But on the other side, his ceiling is front side of the rotation starter, 1 or 2 guy. I think that's his ceiling. So it's been fun watching Levonas. I think you got to keep an eye on him if you haven't. Wake, a little bit quiet, not a ton of buzz about Wake. They are a top 25 team, only have 1 loss on their record right now, have looked pretty good. They've got guys like Cade Lewis and Dalton Wentz that are exciting offensive players as well, and some new guys on the block that I'm sure we'll be talking about as the year goes on. But you got to like what you've seen from Wake and Chris Levonas so far.
Yeah, you mentioned him topping 100 miles per hour. That was in the first inning, and that's crazy. I mean, you zoom out, that's not a guy getting warmed up. This is insane to watch. You mentioned the 20 strikeouts per 9 innings pace he's essentially on at this point. And listening to head coach Tom Walter talking about the velocity, he was talking about the control as well. And I think that is dangerous. And I think the whole Wake Forest rotation is going to be a problem nationally. And the conversation is really going to shift as they go on, because they're grabbing headlines right now with the 100 miles per hour and seeing what he's able to do. But in April, it's going to have to survive some lineups that can sit on. The real question becomes, how does this profile from Levonas scale when ACC play begins? Right now, the combination of velocity, the 19 strikeouts in under 9 innings and only 4 walks suggests that it is in a flash. And the stuff plus is amazing. You think about that, about what he's able to do with the raw foundation of this is being done when he's such a young guy. Imagine what happens when he's maturing and he's able to really get the top of the line organizations behind him. Looking at the frontline stuff and look at some of the bullpen stuff they're getting out of there. Marston is a guy out there that threw 3.1 scoreless innings with a career high 7 strikeouts out of the bullpen. So they essentially turned the game into a 9-inning strikeout clinic, because in just 6 games, the Demon Deacons have logged 87 strikeouts. This is not including today's game, including 18 in that game alone. And they've had 3 games of at least 15 punch outs already. So they're going out there and striking guys out. And again, it's going to be interesting to watch when ACC play begins, but he's a guy that everyone has to keep their eye on. And it's a pitching staff right now for Wake Forest in the immediate that can control a series. And in college baseball, we know teams that control the strike zone and control the radar gun usually control June. So we'll continue to see this as it goes on.
Yeah, I think they're pretty deep pitching wise. And if Morningstar can get it together, watch out. Again, I think a theme of this episode and a lot of college podcasts this week are, it's very hard to truly evaluate some of these teams and just how good they are when some of them haven't played competition that maybe really can tell you how good they are. And that's a theme of what we're going through tonight and kind of probably for the next couple of weeks. I want to get to an offensive player, and this is more of just a quick mention. We're going to learn more about this kid as the season goes on, maybe even this weekend. But Miami freshman Dylan Dubovic, unbelievable start at Miami here. He was named perfect game freshman of the week, ACC player of the week. He went 9 for 11 with 2 doubles, 3 home runs, 9 RBI in just 3 games, which is why he earned those honors. Very well deserved. He is not draft eligible till 2028. So we're gonna see this kid. If you start following him now, I think he's gonna be a fun one to watch over the next several years here. I mean, big kid. I saw a little interview with him earlier, and I mean, he sounds young. Like he's just almost like he is flabbergasted that he's here in the spotlight, but he's here. Big kid, going to get bigger, grow into that frame. He's a lot of fun to watch, and big time series, maybe the best series this weekend coming up. Miami, Florida. Miami versus Florida. 2 teams that are expected to be very, very good teams, and I think this will be a test of just how good both of those squads are. And I'm excited at the prospect of seeing this freshman Dubovik maybe face off with a Liam Peterson this weekend, right? Give us some of that. There's some cool matchups coming this weekend, possibly down the pipe. But just a shout out to Dubovik. What a start.
Yeah, I checked him out on Saturday night. They won 14-3 in a Mercy Rural win at Mark Light Field, and he went 3 for 4, 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. And in the second inning, go out and check out this highlight. Dubovik launched a grand slam, clears the bases, breaks the game open, and later he connected again a 2-run shot, deep center field, raw power, pushing the lead to 9-0. And this is a series that they scored 70 total runs. So this Miami offense is super dangerous. It's going to be fun to watch all year. And it wasn't like it was a garbage time home run. He was setting the tone for the day and for the night. And the fact that he is a freshman, he's dictating at bats this early on, and we'll see if he's able to survive some of the scouting reports that come out on him. But really fun to watch, looking at the 3 homers of the weekend, the gap power, the base running aggression. He had 2 steals as well, 9 RBIs, and looking at the efficiency, 9 hits and 11 at bats. This is a guy that got hot really early. And again, same thing. We kind of had the conversation with Wake. Lafayette is not an ACC caliber staff on the other end of it. So the real test comes when Miami faces some deeper pitching, and they're going to get the opportunity doing that this weekend.
Yeah, can't wait to see what he does against Florida. That's going to be a fun one. We're going to move now to my last topic before I turn it over to you to kind of let you lead the conversation here. But I was all set to come on here, and you have one of these too later, but I was all set to come on and wax poetic about Georgia Tech's offense. Depending on which poll you look at, they're around number 5 in the nation. Perfect Game has them at number 2 in the nation. That got some publicity, some interesting comments, but their offense went absolutely nuts. But then tonight, before we come on, they lose to Georgia State 9-4. And it was an ugly game for Georgia Tech too. Nothing was really going right for them. But I will still tout their offense because I think their offense has the ability to be a problem all year, especially the top half of the lineup, just ridiculous. They, coming into tonight, had put up 20 or more runs 3 times this season already. I mean, I know we've seen several teams go over the 20 mark in the last week or so, but to do it 3 times already, pretty ridiculous, no matter what the competition is. Coming into tonight, they were batting .469 as a team. But sometimes, like we said, all it takes is a rough midweek performance to kind of take some of the shine off, and that happened a little bit tonight against Georgia State. The offense is going to be formidable, like I said. Drew Burris, right, who found the power stroke against Stony Brook this past weekend. Alex Hernandez, who's gotten off to maybe the best start out of anybody as far as batting average. Jaron Advincula, I feel like I always butcher that name, hit a home run tonight, so one bright spot there for Georgia Tech. Von Lackey, who had a walk-off hit with the help of third base, the actual bag. I think it was Saturday against Stony Brook in extra innings. But all those guys, those 4 guys, possible day 1 draft picks this year. Like, that's what you're dealing with when you go out there and start the game against the first 4 or 5 guys in the lineup, night in, night out. I do want to give a shout out to one of their pitchers, Dylan Loy. I was watching this game against Stony Brook, and I do believe this is the game that ended up going to extra innings. He's made 3 appearances now. I do not believe this one was a start. He's made 1 start, I believe, and other times relief appearance, extended relief appearances. He's a transfer from Tennessee. He has looked as good as any pitcher as I've seen, starter, reliever, whatever you want to, and it seems like he can do both. He has been just lights out, 0 ERA in those 3 appearances that have combined for 9 innings, 14 strikeouts in those 9 innings. The breaking pitches and the control and confidence he has in the breaking pitches that he's throwing, the conviction, looks like just no doubts in his mind when he's throwing these things. Lefty, Stony Brook looked like they had no chance. And again, this was a closely, tightly contested game. That series, a 4-game series, you think Georgia Tech, Stony Brook, it's going to be a wipeout. The only game that was truly a wipeout was the final one. The first 3 games, like Stony Brook was hanging around, and Georgia Tech had to figure things out in the second half of the games to get the wins. Back to Lloyd, just 2 hits allowed and 2 walks on the season in those 9 innings. Really impressive. If you haven't watched Dylan Loy, and maybe you did at Tennessee, but you haven't seen him at Georgia Tech, it's worth tuning in. I think he is a weapon for them on the pitching side. Everyone's going to talk about their offense, but Dylan Loy on the pitching side is going to be a weapon for them.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the offense, putting more love on it, you mentioned the 3 separate 20-plus run games, 126 runs scored through 8 games, 133 hits, 50 runs on opening weekend alone. And again, we don't want to lose sight of that, because you look at the Georgia State game, losing 9-4, 5 hits, 3 errors, and you probably think, oh, maybe they didn't pitch well. But Jackson Blakely actually did his job. 4 scoreless innings, 9 strikeouts. The starter really gave them the platform to go on and win this game. The game flipped in the middle innings. Georgia State strung together disciplined at bats and capitalized on some defensive mistakes. And I think that's something to watch, because looking at it, the first 8 games told us what the ceiling could look like when everything clicks. And you're kind of ignoring things like defensive inefficiency when you score 21 runs, because it's not going to hurt you. When you score 4, you get 3 errors. That does matter here. So when you score 27 and the bullpen gives up some runs, you're not really thinking about it, because that does matter when you score 4 runs. So I don't think it's going to be an indictment on the offense. It's a reminder that no team is going to sustain hitting a 446 or whatever you said was first team average goes. There's regression always coming. And the real question was, what happens when the offense cools? They become something human. And I think we're starting to see that layer. The offense is so deep. The lineup is dangerous. And Georgia Tech is going to be more than this explosive offense in the ACC. They're going to have to figure out a way with run prevention and defensive consistency to match the at-bats. And we'll see how that goes. They're still very young in the season. They haven't yet proven they're just as steady when games are 6-4 instead of the 21-3 range. And that's something, because we don't want to overreact to it, of course, but you want to evaluate this team in real time. But again, we don't want to lose sight just in one game. Of course, we're recording right after they lost, but the offense was video game-like watching those numbers they were putting up. But we'll see if they can start winning the tight games, because that's what it's going to be if they want to win a national title.
Yeah, Drew Burris, possible top 5 pick. He may enter into the mix of the home run battle that's going on between a few guys, including the likes of Roch Cholowsky. Caden Sorrell, shout out to him, who's having a big night for Texas A&M tonight. 2 home runs last time I checked. One of them was a grand slam, just sweet lefty swing. But I think some of those guys are going to be in the mix for the home run crown at the end of the year for college baseball. But Drew Burris, in that last game in Sunday against Stony Brook, they ended up batting around in the first inning. He had a home run and then almost a second home run, went off the guy's glove, making a really good effort at the wall, ended up being a triple. And then I believe hit a double in the second inning. So he was 3/4 of the way to a cycle, and the 3 hardest quarters as well, after 2 or 3 innings, I believe it was. But he's a stud, future top 5 pick, more than likely in the Major League Baseball draft, at the very least top 10 pick. But give me your 3 things here, one at a time, that you're highlighting tonight.
So one of the things coming out of this weekend was Tennessee's series loss to Kent State. And I think we have to put some context on this, of course, because it is the first meaningful stress put on Josh Elander in this era, because, of course, we got to remember he's following the institutional momentum built on Tony Vitello. They came into this weekend ranked number 15, carrying a record of 5-2. But watching what went down at this, because look at Vitello and what he established. We already know, and we mentioned what he's going to do in San Francisco. I'm sure we're going to be talking about him a lot. You look at Tennessee, they won 15 straight regular season non-conference weekend series dating back to 2020. So this doesn't really happen. So they lost 9-5 in the Game 3 loss to Kent State at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. And most notable than the single loss was the fact that Tennessee dropped back-to-back games at home. Again, that's something that doesn't happen under Vitello. And I'm not saying Elanders and the errors is going to be a failure, but there's some stress on him right now, because under Vitello, Tennessee's non-conference weekends almost felt like this procedural, surgical, like they're going to go in, they're going to win the series. They may drop one, but they're not losing the series. And looking at this, I mean, this first significant test exposed areas that need a little bit of refinement. You need to figure out the lineup consistency, the Sunday pitching stability, maybe closing leverage situations on their home field. None of those are fatal flaws in late February, because this is all developmental checkpoints. We continue mentioning it's the first 2 weeks of the season. And the timing does add importance here, because Tennessee doesn't have a quiet runway to regroup. So they have to head to Globe Life Field and for the Amegy Bank College Stadium Series, where they'll face number 2 UCLA, Arizona State, and Virginia Tech. So that's an immediate national level competition. They're not going to have any time to reset. The response in Arlington will be more instructive than the Kent State series itself, in my opinion. A team that competes with maybe the structure that we're looking for from a Tennessee team, throwing strikes and situationally being able to react better. But if they're going to be a team that presses and over adjusts or struggles to stabilize, this might be a season that gets out of control pretty quickly. At this stage, they're not in crisis. Let's not be reactive here. But we got to remember what happened to Texas A&M last year. You're not forgetting that. So you don't want this to get off the rails a little bit. The roster is super talented. The infrastructure of the program is still very strong. Vitello's presence is still very much felt on this team. They picked out Josh Elander being the guy to take over for Vitello. They're not going to define this with the Kent State loss, but it's something to perk your ears up about, especially where it is on the schedule, as I mentioned, with UCLA, Arizona State, and Virginia Tech waiting for them.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think, an early season series loss at home, like you said, is not what you want for sure. It could be worse. You could be Arizona, who was a top 25 team and has come out of the gate just barely being able. I think they have one win in 9 or 10 games. It could be that. So I don't think it's disaster level like that. And I think Elander's an easy target, right? Because he lost Vitello, so eyes are on you here. You got to remember, it was more than just Vitello, right? Andrew Fisher drafted by the Brewers. Liam Doyle is gone. Gavin Kylan's gone. Like, there's a lot of guys, leaders in that clubhouse that are gone. They're trying to probably replace more than just Vitello, talent-wise and also leadership-wise. I think they will be fine. I don't think they are as good as they've been the last couple years, and I'm not attributing that to the coach necessarily. I think more so just talent on the field. They have some very, very talented players, like highly draftable guys for sure. But I think they're going to take a little longer to find their footing. I see them using this. I'm sure they hear the noise of there's already criticism around Elander. I think if I know the Tennessee squad, they'll use it to rally around him. And this might be more about Kent State than it is about Tennessee, right? Kent State going in there, getting those gritty wins, winning a series against a top 25 team early in the season. I mean, shout out to them, dude. Like, I'm going to be keeping an eye on them to see if this kind of turns into momentum for a team nobody was really, really talking about. But I'm not, in my opinion, I would not be all over Josh Elander the way some people already are.
No, I mean, very, very good point about Kent State, because that's the spin that you're not really thinking of. Maybe you just played maybe this loss in the series will look a lot better when Kent State has a full season under their belt to be like, oh, they were pretty damn good when they went in there and beat Tennessee. But let's move on to Coastal Carolina. They wound up getting a win today over Campbell, but they dropped a midweek game to Charleston, then lost 14-5 to Illinois in a game that felt maybe a little bit more revealing than random for this team. There's a lot of pressure on Coastal Carolina right now. We saw Illinois freshman A.J. Putty went 5 for 6 with 2 doubles, a home run, and 7 RBIs, including a first-inning grand slam. The concern really carries some extra weight because this is not last year's pitching staff. The 2023 group posted a 3.22 ERA, went 56-13. They reached the College World Series. Key pieces like Caden Bodine, Jacob Morrison, Matthew Podock, Riley Eckhoff, they're all gone. Transfers were added, but the cohesion really doesn't happen overnight. I mean, Cameron Fluke's absence, Hayden Johnson's delayed debut, all these things, they're trying to figure out this rotation in real time. They got the win, as I mentioned, over Campbell today, 13-7. And offensively, I think it was much closer to expectations. So similar to I was mentioning all these teams in real time, maybe you feel a little bit better about Coastal Carolina going into this. 15 hits, multiple scoring innings, looking at what they were able to do. They didn't need just one massive inning. They applied steady pressure, and they kind of withstood the pressure of Campbell throughout the game, who I was proud of as well. Roll humps and figured out they played pretty well in this game. They went up going in there, having 10 hits against Coastal. So through this stretch, I mean, looking at this team, similar to what we're talking about all these other teams, it's run prevention. Coastal can absolutely score. We know offensively they're out there doing their thing. The question is whether they can control games against quality opponents. And in college baseball, we're seeing, as we're continuing to watch this, I think early evidence matters more than in pro ball. I mean, these aren't 162 games to smooth things out. There are roughly 55 right now. Preseason rankings create kind of a baseline for us to understand, but they don't protect you from maybe that structure and the ground moving underneath your feet. We watch how quickly it happens for some of these teams where it's hard to get back at it when you struggle. So right now, I mean, Coastal looks like this. I think the offense remains strong, watching what they're able to do. The pitching staff is still forming an identity about who they'll be, but the rotation turnover from last year is real and it's visible and it's pretty early here. But the ceiling is still high. Looking at the 13-7 win over Campbell, I think this kind of takes it away from being this negative spiral of a narrative that's extended, but it's showing some resilience from a team. But we'll see. Continue to watch where this goes in the next 2 weeks. If the rotation tightens and they figured this out, I think Coastal will be just fine. But they're adjusting. I think we have to see who this version of this team will be.
Yeah, and it's similar to the Tennessee conversation. Not that they've had the series lost at home like Tennessee did, but all because you got so far last year or the year before. That there's so much turnover in college baseball. It doesn't necessarily mean you can just pop that uniform back on and with different people and you're going to be just as good. So, I mean, Cameron Flukie, it doesn't seem like a serious injury, but they're being careful with him as they should be. And what that does, similar, I heard a lot of people talking about, TCU. One of the reasons they've struggled because of injuries. You lose a guy like Tommy Lepore. Same thing with Flukie, right? It's not just him. Everyone then moves up. You lose your Friday starter, then everyone else has to kind of move up and pitch in a different spot, right? And you go through your pitchers a little quicker. It's shorter rosters nowadays. So, it has a big effect. And we've seen them give up a pretty solid amount of runs over the first few weeks. And shout out to Campbell, like you said, gritty team always. Our guy, Chris Marks, who we had on the show last year, and I got to hang out with a little bit after a game against Stony Brook last year. Great guy. He's always going to have his team ready. They had a decent series against Troy, put up some runs. I think they're also another team kind of trying to find consistent pitching. But yeah, I'm not too worried about Coastal either. I'm really just not sure what to make of them yet. That's again a common theme is we're still trying to figure this out. Looking at that top 25, there might be 10 teams in there right now that are not there at the end of the year. I'm not saying that as a guarantee, but that could be the case.
Sure. Yeah. And so moving on here, we had Oklahoma entered into today as I was setting up this document to discuss things. And they came in today with one of the more convincing early season profiles in the country, really not just in record, but how they were able to win these games through 7 games. They were 7-0 with a 99-13 run differential. That's plus 86 in a week. Their team ERA sat at 1.96, struck out 79, was 29. Opponents had just 6 extra base hits against them. Offensively, they're hitting 359 as a club, had recorded 29 extra base hits. They stole 29 bags, or 30 bags, I should say, in 32 attempts. They set a program record with 7 consecutive double-digit scoring games. And again, we can look at some of these players here. Trey Gamble was hitting 545. Camden Johnson led the country with 11 stolen bases. 6 of 17 players with plate appearances have recorded a hit. And the weekend rotation, Cameron Johnson, LJ Marquez, Cord Rager, 52 strikeouts, 12 walks, only 4 earned runs. And more importantly, I mean, you look at it, they dismantled Coppin State 57-1. But I mean, they won the Shiners Cup Children's College Baseball Showdown, defeating Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and number 10 TCU by a combined 32-6 against quality opposition. That's something to take note of. They got their doors blown off today. They didn't play well against Arizona State. So again, that changes a little bit of the optics. I think that does shift because it is early in the season. It kind of shows, all right, well, that's a little bit different, a little bit sobering. Looking at the ERA spiking from that, of course. But the more important question is how all this changes the team. I mean, they got hit in the mouth. We'll see how they respond to it. But through 7 games before this, Oklahoma's identity was built on a lot of measurable things. I mean, the fact that they're throwing strikes, they're preventing runs from being scored. Their offensive production was spread across the lineup. It wasn't just one player doing it, and a lot of controlled aggression. I believe, and I think this is going to be the case in Major League Baseball. Maybe it's going to be the case in WBC international play. Elite stolen base efficiency without outs on the bases is going to be huge going forward to win these meaningful games. So, I mean, looking at the Arizona State, exposing them a little bit, the bullpen containment, the multi-run innings, like maybe you throw it out, but maybe it is something about a playbook of people like, hey, we can beat Oklahoma at their own game.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Oklahoma has something that a lot of teams, even the really good ones, don't have. Like just 2 studs at the top of that rotation. You mentioned them, Cam Johnson, Mercurius. Like they're pretty fortunate to have that if those guys can stay healthy and be there all year. So I'm not too worried about them. You get hit in the mouth every once in a while. And Arizona State, just if you haven't noticed, probably not getting the respect they deserve yet. They're undefeated.
8-0.
They have
8-0,
yeah. They have not lost. So it may just be that they are way better than anyone forecasted. And the good news for Oklahoma, a lot of times midweek game, you might only see the team once, and that's it. And if you get hit in the mouth, you don't get to have a chance at revenge, at least that week. Not the case here. They face off again Wednesday. All right. So they could turn around and get their win back. But Arizona State, man, they're rolling right now. So good for them.
For sure. And that's going to wrap up our conversation here. Devin, I know you wanted to put the precursors on what we're looking for this weekend, because if you guys are looking to follow college baseball There's a lot of really great games on deck. We mentioned some of them in our conversations about these teams that are specific, but I'll let you take the lead, Dev.
Yeah, so I mean, just as we speak here, one of the games I was watching tonight as we record, UCLA San Diego State, I mentioned earlier, top 7th right now. San Diego State still with a lead, but UCLA climbing back. It's 4-3 right now. And Cholowsky, last time I checked, no home runs, but I believe he scored twice, so still getting involved in the offense in a big way. We'll see how that game ends. But going forward here, a few things I'll point out. I just pointed out Oklahoma, Arizona State in the second game of that little short series, midweek series tomorrow. That's interesting, especially after Arizona State having a dominant win today. Alabama Southern Miss. Last time I looked at that, I want to give that a shout out. Southern Miss at the top of 11.7's mid-major rankings, which I love that they do, and also number 12 in the country. Like, we can't bury that. This team is legit, man. I think they got a big win over Oregon State just a few days ago. They've looked really, really good. Last time I checked the Alabama score, they were beating Alabama 12-4. So unless something
13-4 now and top of the eighth. So, yeah.
Okay, so it looks like they're going to get another nice win there. But going forward in the weekend, you mentioned earlier the Amegy Bank Series. I mean, you got a bunch of teams there that are some heavy hitters that are going to be mixing it up with each other over the weekend. You're talking Texas A&M, possible offensive powerhouse. I know they had a little bit of an offensive outage before, over the weekend series where they were struggling to put up runs, but pulled out the games. But I think when they're all going right, that has a chance to be an offensive powerhouse. Texas A&M, Arizona State, maybe they'll go into this undefeated if they can win Oklahoma again tomorrow night. Mississippi State, number 4 in the country, I believe. Tennessee, who has a little bit of chip on their shoulder now. UCLA, number 1 team in the country. Most places you look, number 2 at the worst. Virginia Tech is in there as well. I think the main event as we speak now is Sunday. UCLA, Mississippi State facing off. 2 top 5 teams in the country. That's a lot of fun. I mentioned the Florida-Miami series earlier. I mean, that is a 3-game set. That's one of those games that I feel like could, by Sunday, get a little chippy. So I'll be watching that one. Southern Miss, we just mentioned them. They'll face another one of the better mid-majors in the country in a series, Louisiana Tech. I think that's a fun one to watch as well. You got Texas and Coastal on Friday. Texas took care of business against one of the teams that I love. I always get these initials wrong, but let me make sure. URGTV, right? Rio Grande. Yes. Okay. Texas Valley. So Texas took care of business against them tonight, or they are in the middle of doing that. But Texas and Coastal on Friday, that's a fun one. Alabama, Oregon State. Are we going to see LeBron versus Dax Whitney? Are we getting that matchup? That's another popcorn matchup. Maybe if we get Whitney on Friday night, we see that matchup. I believe they face off on Saturday, so we might miss it, but fingers crossed. We'll see what happens there. And then Ole Miss and Coastal Carolina. Ole Miss just snuck into the top 25 rankings, so they're on a nice little roll there. But lots of fun ones coming up this weekend.
So we're going to be continuing discussing some of these projection curves, the roster construction, and how these pitching staffs started to develop, and of course all the offensive explosions we're seeing all across the country as February says goodbye. I mean, this is the last week of February as we move towards March next week. Shortened month, of course, hopefully brings some warmer weather, and college baseball is sorting itself out pretty quickly, and the contenders are starting to show some traits, and we're looking at some of these teams starting matching up, and something has to give. So we definitely will appreciate all your support. We love you guys coming out and listening to the show. Hopefully you enjoyed our first Tablesetters University conversation, all focused on college baseball, because as Devin said before, it deserves a full scope of our attention, of making sure we're not just covering in bits and pieces where it fits in. We want to give you guys the full conversation because honestly, I've been really enjoying all this. It's making all this winter and all the gross snow outside, all this stuff really feel a little bit better when you have college baseball that in a lot of ways, Dev, as we said before, sometimes it's overwhelming with the amount of quality baseball on our TVs. As much as ESPN, the streaming app, isn't something that is the most seamless use. Either way, there's a lot of baseball available for you. And at any point, there's quality baseball that, in my opinion, to tie it back to Major League Baseball, at any point, these guys feel like they're going to be contributing to big league teams in a short order. So it's really awesome to see that.
Yeah, and listen, if you're tuning in for the first time because you're a big college baseball fan, you can't get enough baseball coverage, college baseball coverage, check out our other stuff as well. If you're not a Major League Baseball fan, maybe we help make you one as well. And then the opposite side of things, if you are a longtime Table Setters listener, but mostly for our Major League Baseball coverage, maybe some of our fantasy stuff, and you're not a college baseball fan, maybe you're saying, I just don't really have a team to follow, right? A natural team to follow. latch on to some of these players, man. There's so many different guys. And I find myself, I root a little bit for Wake because my dad went there, right? I root a little bit for Delaware. I'm an alum there, right? Both of us, I think, have a soft spot for Campbell after interviewing the coach last year. Stony Brook as well is kind of our most local team. We had Coach Martin on here, which, again, he was hit by a line drive. We should have mentioned this. In that Georgia Tech series, he's doing better now. So shout out to Coach Martin. Tough dude. But I also find myself just out of nowhere latching on to players. Like, I can't get enough Caden Sorrell. Justin Lebron, I mean, I'm one of a million, but how fun is it to watch that guy? And there's others out there. I won't go on and on, but that, I think, if you're not a college baseball fan and you don't think you can be, I'm telling you, latch on to some of these players and keep track of those guys. There's so much out there. You don't necessarily need to just be rooting for one team. That's what I found about college baseball. I think it's easier to latch on if you have that one team, but there's other ways to get into the sport.
So on our way out the door, remember to follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Tablesetters Pod for all the updates, behind the scenes content, some interactive fan polls. Devin's always running the X machine over there. We want to hear from you. We'll be back on Thursday with a fantasy baseball episode talking all things sleepers. Get ready for your drafts. They're happening soon. So tune in, check it out, share with your friends. We'll be hopping in and recording that and sending you guys some love for your fantasy drafts. They're around the corner. But until that time, we'll talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball.